मेरा भी सेकंड स्पीकर हूँ 11:45। मेरा भी सेकंड स्पीकर हूँ 11:45।
Nikita Yadav, Nikita Yadav, are you presenting in this session? Dr. Nikita Yadav, are you presenting in this session?
मेरा भी
I'm making a report.
11:45।
Nikita Yadav, Dr. Nikita Yadav, are you
I'm
presenting
making a
in this
report.
session?
Ma'am, I'm making a report.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, please.
I am Dr. Saqib Abrar.
Yes, yes.
My presentation was supposed to be in this video session.
Yes,
And Dr. Durjati Sharma is the chair for this
Yes,
session.
yes,
Am
yes.
I at right place?
Yes, yes, you are at the right place.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I am the second speaker in this list.
Yes, 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 yes.
So we'll start with that. With the Raza Naeem has joined.
He's joining, he or she, I'm not sure. Joining, but not yet joined.
Is it a waiting room, right?
Yeah, no, we've admitted him.
All right.
There must be some connectivity issue.
Then possibly we can begin with
Saqib Abrar.
Saqib Abrar, right? So, hello everyone. Welcome to this business session online. Business session 10.
Already
on
focused.
Progressive poetry, fiction, and drama. So we have 5 speakers, presenters in this session. So 3 of them are the designated speakers, and then the 2 of them were supposed to speak in some other session, but like for certain regions, they will be presenting their papers in this particular session. So the speakers are Raza Naeem, M. Saqib Abrar, Piyush Rawal, then
Buzra Adam.
Asif Abrar, and Buzra Adil. So these are the 5 speakers, right? So Raza Naeem is joining. So maybe we can start with Saqib Abrar and Dr. Mohammad Saqib Abrar is an assistant professor in the Department of English of Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh, and is presenting a paper on the social concerns in Habib Tanveer's Charandas Chor. So we request Dr. Abrar to make his presentation. Thank you, sir. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. The title of my paper is Socio-Political Concerns in Habib Tanveer's Charandas Chor. I will not be sharing the screen. Simply, I am going to make presentation here. Habib Tanveer, an important figure and one of the celebrated 20th century Indian playwrights associated with Progressive Writers Association, initiated the revival of interest in folk performance tradition.
He started Naya Theatre in 1959. For the creation of his noteworthy works, ranging on the history and famous plays such as Agra Bazaar, The Living Tale of Hirama, and Anjum Katya. These plays, political, folk traditions, and many other such shows, reflecting Tanveer's secular, independent, and compassionate mindset. These plays brought him a number of national and international awards and recognition, such as Sangeet Natak Academy Award in 1969, Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship in 1979, Padma Shri in 1983, Kalidas Samman in 1990, and so on. Tanveer's most celebrated play is Charandas Chowk, that surrounds against a Rajasthani folk tale by Vijayan Detha and delineates the life of an honest thief. Really, this seems paradoxical to say, honest thief. Nevertheless, the play revolves around its central character, Charandas, whose kind enthusiasm reveals the hypocrisy and two-facedness of the contemporary world. Honesty, righteousness, truthfulness, moral values, which are expected from socially affluent sections of the society, is altogether absent. Tanveer was disillusioned to see that these qualities are found in a thief who is struggling for his own existence. Keeping in mind these points, the present paper is an attempt to map Tanveer's Charandas Chowk, underlining the predicament of socially neglected sections of the society and their major concerns. Tanveer was influenced by the folk theatre tradition and the German dramatist Bertolt Brecht. He started Naya Theatre in 1959 that paved the way for the creation of his noteworthy works ranging on the history and tradition of tribal folk of Chhattisgarh. The play is about a thief named Charandas, a typical hero. He runs around the forces of law and orders till he comes up against established institutions, religion, and class hierarchies. Tanveer renegotiates the idea of human by powerfully projecting the reversal of social hierarchy, where truthfulness, honesty, integrity, and moral values belong to a thief, and the so-called civilized people of higher strata of society are precisely devoid of these virtues. Tanveer, to quote Dharvedkar, Tanveer embeds his folk narrative in a recognizably contemporary world of social inequality and political corruption. The play revolves around the life of our hero, Chor Charandas, a man of value and dharma. How in his daily life he carries about his stealing business and lands in the ashram of a guru upon being followed by police. When the guru asks him to leave his occupation, Charandas retorts back humorously. To quote, Guru, मैं चोर तो अंधेरे में चोरी करता हूं, मगर आप तो दिन में भरे लोगों के बीच में चोरी करते हो. Guru, in English we can translate it as, Guru, I steal in the darkness of night, but you steal in the broad daylight, in the midst of people. These lines were powerful and satirical, bringing out the irony in the society. The plot revolves around circumstances, taking Charandas to the home of the Guru, who preaches on giving up vices on one side, while indulging in the same covertly by presenting a constant demand for Guru Dakshina. As our Charandas does not want to give up on his profession, which he holds so dear and does so dutifully, he takes up 4 promises, vows as Guru Dakshina to the Guru. The most important one is never to lie. Second one is that he will never eat from a gold plate, as he is already in possession of one. The third one is, even if the queen herself agrees to marry him, he will not do so. And the last one is, no matter how much one asks him to ascend the throne, he will always abstain from doing so, having in mind the rarest possibility of occurrence of any of these events in his life. He walks off, he moves happily. But then a series of events unfold, bringing to such situations where he has to choose between keeping up the oath or to break it. Charan Das chooses to keep the promises he made. The turn of events shows the cruel face of the society. The Guru laughs at Charan Das, but Charan Das believes that anything is possible. The commitment leads to an ironical situation where thieving and lying go together. This uncanny Guru-thief nexus, built on the state of renunciation of lies, accords a potential ground for Tanveer to renegotiate the notion of humane and righteousness in the context of contemporary make-believe world. The play ends on a sad note, with Charan Das paying the price for always speaking truth. To quote from the play, चोरी तो सभी करते हैं, सब अपनी चोरी छुपाते हैं, लेकिन मैं डंके की चोट पर बोलता हूँ. We can translate it into English. Everyone is indulged in stealing, but all of us try to keep it a secret, whereas I publicly declare without any fear or hesitation. We go on to reflect over Charan Das' words, which strike a chord with the realities of our time. The play saw all its characters give outstanding performance, especially the dialogue between the chore and the police. The queen's maid silent presence touched the hearts of the audience as she spoke so much with her expression alone than by words. Guru was the central character who portrayed different human shades in a single role. The dialogues were catchy and satirical. The play presents a world swayed gurus whose ashrams provide a virtual refuge to drunkards, gamblers, smokers, and thieves. Representing the lower strata of society, these outlaws by their otherwise impossible salvation by giving their guru his due. Charan Das' first encounter with so-called guru lays bare the harsh realities of our existing society and sharply focuses on the contrasting human traits. Charan Das meets the Guru and wants to be his disciple. Tanveer critiques the socio-political context in the play. Charan Das showed that has a universal appeal. The so-called politicians and bureaucrats, as well as people belonging to the privileged section of the society, are hoarding money, snatching from others by means of exploitation and distributive infringement of the assets of our country. But they are not found culpable, whereas a petty thief, when gets indulged in pilferage for the survival, he or she is often found offender, and laws and regulations punish them severely. But those who steal everything, everybody, all resources, befooling us, get the escape route. This reminds us of Lakshman Gaikwad's play, Lakshman Gaikwad's writing The Branded. Branded, that is Uchalya community, there also, by literally this word Uchalya means pilferer. There also Lakshman Gaikwad is trying to reveal the fact that their community, due to socio-political circumstances, are forced to indulge in this profession. They are not doing it, we can say, they are simply doing this activity left with no other option, simply for the sake of their survival. But whereas there are others, politicians, or rather we can say other sections of society in general, who are hoarding money and they are suffering from famine. That is, they have nothing to eat. On the other hand, one has hoarded all the wealth, all the money, all the gold. Similar case here also Charandas Chor is trying to say. It is a miniature of the world whose very existence depends on three unavoidable human institutions, that is, society, religion, and the state. Habib Tanvir chooses and adopts the important leading person from each of them as his main characters in this play to criticize the world order and system, particularly in Indian context, through a medium of touchstone like Charandas, whom whoever comes into contact with unconsciously exposes his own vices and faults. The playwright lampoons the thoughts and activities of such persons associated with these institutions and highlights hypocrisy and roguery, dishonesty and untruthfulness, gradual moral degradation, and loss of social values. The word guru evokes a conventional sense of self-restraint and selfishness, benevolence and dedication, miraculous power and deep religious knowledge. The guru, who is a religious leader and who leads by example, has some good qualities along with some bad ones. The guru in the drama is paradoxically somewhat rogue and liar. He does not follow what he preaches. Guru teaches his devotees, but he himself is not following that one. Lastly, but most importantly, the dialect used by Tanvir is very common Hindi and Urdu, and consequently the drama becomes more and more acceptable to the common mass, who can be presented as the villagers waiting for the door. All these folk ingredients have successfully contributed in making Charandas Chor a memorable folk theatre. The projection of Thief as a practitioner of truthfulness and moral uprightness exposes disordered social scenario. Charandas, the protagonist of the play, does not come from the high class of society, but he is a noble and kind-hearted person. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Abrar, for your very short and crisp paper, and within the given time limit, you excellently summarized the points and you have shed light on the issues that you endeavored to bring forth through your analysis of Habib Tanvir's play Charandas Chor. So we have the questions after each paper. How do we go? After each
It's
paper?
up to you.
Right. Let's have the questions after each paper. So if there are any questions, if anybody would like to respond to this paper, they may please do so. If there are any questions, let me just set the discussion in motion then. In this particular paper, what Dr. Abrar has done, he has put forth the dilemma, the socio-ideological or the moral dilemma that is attached to the life, the very story of Charandas as one goes through this play. And as it happens, he becomes a martyr. He becomes, and I was reminded at this particular point to a short story called The Martyr's Corner, where the very dynamics of the society causes tremendous upheaval in the life of people belonging to the lower echelons of the society, like Charandas. Because for Charandas, the very profession of thievery, if we look at the history of folk tales or rather any cultural history of any region, the very act of thievery is something which is integrated into the social fabric of the society, even though we sort of dismiss the profession as something immoral, something that ought to be punishable, but there is no society where thievery is not an accepted, but it's there. We find that there are certain mechanics associated with this very quote unquote profession, if we may term it so. So what Charandas was doing, as he said, he he does the robbery in the darkness of night. So as far as his own profession is concerned, he is truly committed to his own profession, right? But what he sees in the society is a disjuncture. There is a kind of a mismatch between the values of this particular profession and the one and the manner in which this profession is played out in the larger context, the
Yes, sir.
political and social context of the society. So what this paper tries to do is to show how the misplaced priorities and the misplaced expectations, how it causes a moral dilemma within the thinking or within the thought process of Charan Das, and he finds himself a misfit into the very society, and how and very much like Khasiram, when we have read the play, how his very act comes at the end of the play to haunt him. Whereas in Khasiram, he himself brings the disaster upon him. But for Charan Das, what happens? The society, at the end of the day, the society comes back, but though the equally complicit, culpable society at the end of the play comes back to punish him for the very offense which they are regularly committing. So this is the tragedy. This is the tragedy of people belonging to, the lower echelons who have to pay the price for mistakes which are committed by, the torch bearers, the custodians of morality. And
Yes, sir.
Dr. Abrar has excellently brought in this particular aspect in his analysis of the play. But maybe I would just like to ask, because a question or this is like an
Yes.
observation. See, in case of in Tanvirji's plays, whether we take this particular play or even his play, the other play, Kamdev Ka Sapna, where he is adapting Midsummer Night's Dream, his very purpose is, he is trying to
Expose the evils of society before the.
is because what happens in every play, there is a way to look at the narrative. What he does, he subverts. He
sir.
subverts the very lens, the very perspectives through which one looks at these plays. For example, in in Kamdev Ka Sapna, it's not the courtiers who are the ones who are driving the play forward, but the root mechanicals who are given the strings, who are given the primary roles in driving the narrative forward. Here
Yes,
in
sir.
this particular play, what we see when in Charan Das Chor also what happens, he is actually toppling down. He's actually, it's more like he's questioning the very hegemonic perspectives which, define our vision of art and aesthetics within the society. So do you think in this way, Habib Tanvir is trying to bring forth a new definition of aesthetics, a new definition of progress in literature, progressivism?
See, sir. To make this point understand, we may go back when Charan Das was making promises before the Guru, whatever points he has said. What we notice there in that situation, that the Guru laughs at Charan Das, but Charan Das believes that anything is possible. The commitment leads to an ironical. What Tanvir is trying to reveal in this play, that all these situations may lead to any ironical situation where thieving and lying may go together. This uncanny guru thief nexus, built on the state of renunciation of lies, accords a potential ground for Tanvir to revive this notion of human and righteousness in the context of contemporary, I may use the phrase, make-believe world. Tanvir's simple idea is, just like other creative writers, to expose before us the evils of the society. Here, the central idea that we notice, that all of us belonging to every different walks of life are indulged in one sort of or the other sort of corruption. We are not dedicated, we are not honest towards our profession whatsoever. And we are simply materialistic in money making, money minding. Whereas this particular man or central character that we may have, or concept of anti-hero, we may rather say, what he is doing, he is just thieving for the sake of helping others. Wherever he takes money, sack of rice, there is episode of sack of rice. He distributes among those who are nothing to eat there. Again, he steals Sattu from Sattu. There is reference of this also in the play, and he calls that person, "अरे हम लोग बैठ करके भाई भाई की तरह खाते हैं. Come, share with me." This shows that whatever he is having, he is ready to share with his fellow beings. Whereas we, or rather we can say, major portion of our society is by nature selfish, and they are living in just contemporary make-believe world. This is what I think so, sir.
Right, right. Thank you, Dr. Abrar. Thank you for your observations. So it was very nice paper, and thank you for your
Thank you,
comments as well. So I guess with this, we can move to our next presentation. So we're thanking Dr. Abrar.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so we move to our next presentation, and the next presentation is by Raza Naeem, and Raza Naeem, the presentation is titled Ahmad Riaz, the Mute Martyr of Chak Chumra, 1922-1958. Raza Naeem is an award-winning Pakistani researcher and translator, trained in political economy at the University of Leeds in UK and in Middle Eastern history from the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, USA. He's based in Lahore as a visiting faculty in sociology at the University of Central Punjab. So may I now request Raza Naeem to please make the presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon from Lahore. I hope you can hear me.
Hear you, yeah.
Lahore se adab, or first of all, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Dr. Fatma Rizvi, for actually informing me about this very important seminar, which is taking place to commemorate a very, very important event here in this part of the world. And then to the organizers for accepting my abstract and making it possible for me to, be here, at least virtually, to put in my, 2 bits. It is a tremendous honor to represent the Progressive Writers Association from here in Pakistan. I think the gentleman who introduced me did not say that I am the president of the PWA here in Lahore. So it's a tremendous honor to represent the PWA, even from afar at this very important event. And an even greater honor to present on the life of a very forgotten poet who actually hewed to the progressive tradition in Urdu literature. His name is Ahmad Riaz, and he was born 100 years ago, this year, and he actually died in this month during these days, December 28th, 1961. So, we will also remember him during these days. I am just going to share my presentation with you, which I have prepared for the occasion. I hope I can be heard. Can my presentation be seen, please? Hello? Hello, can my presentation be seen? I hope my presentation.
Hello?
Can my presentation be seen, please? Thank you.
No. Hello, can you listen to me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Only your desktop is seen, not the file, PPT.
How do I share it, please? Can you help me? Sorry.
You close this and just share, and then you go to the file. You close
Actually,
this.
I pressed the screen share option and then I loaded my PPT. That is what I did.
You have to open the PPT.
The PPT is here on the desktop. What do I do now? I have downloaded it. I actually pressed the screen share button, on my Zoom, and then following the instructions. Can you see it, please?
No, I cannot see it. I am a participant.
What should I do? I'm so sorry. Can someone help here? Excuse me, I need some help here. I'm sorry to bother you. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Gee, sorry, I'm having problems
Your
downloading.
screen is visible. You just open your PPT. Just double click on that PPT and it will open. Your screen is
Look,
very much visible.
there was a participant who said that they could not see the PPT, so I closed my PPT.
Your screen was visible. Your screen was visible. The PPT was not there.
I was asking so many
Just the
questions.
icon of the PPT.
Nobody actually answered me, and then a participant spoke up and said they
I am
can't see.
also a pass, and now your PPT is visible, very much visible.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So I just move it according to my. Should I just say next? What should I do? I'm sorry. Hello.
I'm also a participant. I think you should start your presentation in a slideshow mode.
How do I start the slideshow? I'm really sorry.
Just click on the slideshow that is written in the above slideshow mode.
I'm sorry. Where is the slideshow mode? I'm really. I think someone is operating my PPT, but they're not getting to me. I mean, I need to hear from the people who are operating my PPT. I mean, I'm sorry to bother you. You're just a participant, but there is someone who downloaded my PPT. Hello. Look, I need some help with my PPT. I'm sorry, I've been calling out for help and I don't know who is in charge here. I would like to continue with my presentation, but I can't do that without any help. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? I'm sorry, I need some help here.
Reza, once again, I'm participant speaking.
Yes, please.
So you want to do the full screen?
Are you actually, I mean, who is in charge in the presentation? I didn't open it.
I don't know. I don't know. My presentation is after yours, but you move the slides if you have the problem. One after another and start the presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful. Yes, okay. So yes, I'm going to be talking about this very unknown Pakistani poet Ahmad Riaz, who I was saying was born 100 years ago this year and who died 61 years ago. In these very days in 1958. Next, please. So I will begin with one of his own verses, which I have translated. Mera fan jagti tarikh ka paighambar hai. So only a few people will be acquainted with the name of Ahmad Riaz in this period. I would also like to confess at the outset that this part, biographical essay, would not have seen the light of day had it not been for the kind and sympathetic assistance of Riaz's paternal nephew, Dr. Anis Ahmed, who lives in Lahore, and he is the poet's sole surviving relative now. So what I have to say here, I'm sorry, the screen has disappeared. The PPT, thank you very much. So what I have to say here about Ahmad Riaz is also entirely the autobiography of his aforementioned nephew also, because they spent a lot of time together and a lot of things which the latter knows and only he knows have been shared in his essay as well. I've tried to meld the nephew's perspective with the biography of Ahmad Riaz. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you. So talking a bit about his earlier childhood, Ahmad Riaz's father, Mumtaz Ahmad, was the reader of the Deputy Commissioner in Ludhiana. And since people are unacquainted with English, they would turn towards him for most of their work. So he had great respect in the city. Ahmad Riaz was the third among his four sons, and he was born in 1922, as I mentioned earlier, 100 years ago this year. Next, please. Next, please. Next. Next. Can you hear me? Hello?
Raza, I am able to hear as a participant. So you speak generally. I don't know what is the problem. There is nobody there.
No, I think someone is moving the slides, but they're not hearing me. They said that we will move the slides when you say next. And I've been saying next for a long time now.
Okay,
but
now
the
there is a
slides are
message.
not moving. Can someone please? I mean, I don't know. I'm really sorry. These types of things can really disrupt a presentation. I mean, I want my slides to be moved, and I'm saying next, and someone was moving that before, but now they are not moving it anymore, and I'm stuck here.
Can you hear us? Can the participants hear us? Can the other participants hear us?
It's very disrupting, you know.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not there physically, so
just confirming. Can the other participants, Piyush, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, right?
Can someone please move the slides now?
Right,
I mean,
so
I'm sorry.
we are operating the slides from our end. So may I request Dr. Naik to please continue his presentation?
But I can't continue if the slides are not being moved. Can you go on to the next slide?
We are on slide number 4.
But here I am. I cannot see that slide. I have already done this slide now. I'm sorry.
Which slide do we?
Just can you please let us know from which slide are you reading? Which slide number are you reading now?
The third slide is coming now. I've read the third slide. I would like to proceed to the fourth slide, please.
Yeah, the fourth slide. Just a minute.
I've been screaming for the last 15 minutes.
I'll check which slide is
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm
Can anybody check which slide is
this continued slide. We are
this
seeing
one?
this, huh?
Okay. Dr. Naik, we are on slide 4.
Yeah, we are on slide 4, Dr. Naik. We are on
I can't see that slide on my share screen. I mean, I'm sorry you are seeing it, but I can't see it. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to proceed with my presentation. I mean, otherwise.
Please proceed. We'll follow you.
Yeah.
But I can't see my slide. Please facilitate me.
Showing, so why not there?
Can the other participants see the slide on their screen?
Why is this slide not showing on my? I'm sorry. You know, I mean, please facilitate me. I've been requesting.
Maybe you have minimized the Zoom.
The slide should be
Yes. Maybe you have minimized the Zoom tab. You may
share again.
The slide is
I
not
will share
showing.
again. Never mind, I will share again.
I'm really sorry. I mean, I'm in a flow, and these types of things really disrupt the whole flow of the presentation. I mean, you can't expect me to complete my presentation without
just check now. Just check now.
No, I can't see the fourth slide. I'm sorry, I can't.
Now you can see.
Yes, thank you. I can. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please carry on. Please carry
We
on.
cannot go in slideshow mode, tell him. We'll have to do with this. Okay, don't tell him this. Yeah.
Thank you. So Ahmad Riaz, his heart was not at all into studying. He left studying after passing middle school and began roaming about in the city. He would be rarely seen at home, but when he came, he would cheer the heart of the little children. Ahmad Riaz had no respect among the seniors. They all considered him idle and a wanderer who could not do anything in life. So he began poetry in those very days. Initially, Ahmad Riaz adopted the pen name Jigar Qureshi, but after a few days in the gatherings of Sahil Ludhianvi, Ibn Insha, and Hamid Akhtar, he began to use the pen name of Ahmad Riaz. Next, please. Thank you. So in the beginning, his family members thought he had his poetry written by Sahir, and it was very much Sahir staying in whose company Ahmad Riaz had become a wanderer. Ahmad Riaz was very much an idler anyways. His father had him recruited in the Royal Indian Air Force, which used to be a very prestigious organization, and because there were posters everywhere, and World War II had already begun. So his education was incomplete. Perhaps he was recruited as a mechanic and sent to Ambala, which was 80 miles away. Now, for a sensitive and delicate natured person like Ahmad Riaz to tighten the parts of the planes with screwdrivers and pliers was an unbearable agony. Letters full of complaints began to arrive from him, and the father very much felt pity. So he had Riaz released from there after pleading with and begging some British deputy commissioner, and the latter must have become troublesome for the officers there anyways. Next, please. So the same wandering and poetry and literature remained the routine after Ahmad Riaz returned to Ludhiana. In those days, a big mushaira was held in the company Bagh there, and the canopy was all decked up, and the renowned poet Tajur Najib Abadi was presiding. Sahir had already come and now and recited his very famous poem Chakle. Now, when Riaz's turn came, once again, there was a clamor from the crowd for his very, very famous poem Monasteries or Khankahein. And Ahmad Riaz came and recited, and I quote in Urdu. Next, please. I'm going to recite the poetry in Urdu so that you can get a taste of this poem. The translation is there on the slide. ये लंगर ये नजरें ये दिलचस्प मेले मुरादों के पैसे मुरीदों के रेले ये शीरें अदा मुतरिबों के झमेले ये पीराने दी की आराम गाहें ये अल्लाह के प्यारों की हैं खानकाहें ये भरकम मजावर की उठती निगाहें दिखाती हैं लोगों को जन्नत की राहें जो नजराने लाएं वो पाएं जो चाहें ये पीराने दी की आराम गाहें ये अल्लाह के प्यारों की हैं खानकाहें बड़ी बूढ़ियां कुलफतें सह के अक्सर मिलाती हैं उल्फत के मारों को लाकर यहाँ की फिजाएं हैं रूमान परवर ये पीराने दी की आराम गाहें तराशे हैं इंसान फितने भी क्या क्या है जिंदों की दुनिया में मुर्दों की पूजा तकद्दुस के हामी बताएं खुदारा ये अल्लाह के प्यारों की आराम गाहें यही दीन वालों की हैं खानकाहें. End quote. Next, please. Next. Yes, thank you. So this poem became very much as famous as Sahib's Chakle, and unfortunately this poem is not included in Ahmad Riaz's sole collection Mauj-e Khoon, which was published 3 years after his death by the Anjuman-e Yadgar-e Riaz under the arrangement of Professor Manzoor Hussain Shor Alig from Lailpur. This poem was memorized by many who attended these mushairas since it was heard with much insistence. Now, Sahir Ludhianvi and Ahmad Riaz got a lot of praise for their respective poems, Chakle and Khankahein. Ahmad Riaz was now really a poet in the eyes of his family after this very successful appearance at the company Bagh Mushaira. Next, please. So this was the golden age of the PWA, the Progressive Writers Movement, and Ahmad Riaz had emerged at the forefront as a comprehensive poet. The seniors of the family also began to acknowledge him as a poet. Ahmad Riaz's whole family and all the residents of his locality had become the workers of the Muslim League. In 1945, Ahmad Riaz came along to Moga with his brother because his brother had been posted there. And Ahmad Riaz continued with his poetic and literary gatherings in Moga. His poems began to be published in the journals of Bombay like Naya Adab and Naya Daur. Next, please. Thank you. Puran Chand Joshi was the president of the or Secretary General of the All India Communist Party. His party newsletters and personal letters came from Ahmed Riaz. Another very renowned journal editor, Siddiqa Begum Sioharvi, issued some journals from Jabalpur. Her letters too came. And Ahmed Riaz's nephew tells me that on that day, when letters from Siddiqa Begum used to come, there used to be a very romantic gleam in Riaz's eyes, and the former would read out the letter to his nephew. He would also mention the name of Amrita Pritam with joy. She had some connection with Riaz's, friend Sahil Ludhianvi. And when he was in that element, he would recite this Punjabi couplet, Nikudiye mutiare peng jhatendi de tere chumke jhumke lan hulare, meaning, hey girl, take a long swing, your earrings move, with a lot of happiness. Next, please. Yes, thank you. One day, Ahmed Riaz said that I'm writing a versified play for radio. Its title was Meena Bazaar, and its beginning verses went like this. And again, I'm reciting these verses in Urdu. रास्ता दो के शहंशाह जहां आते हैं, आइए आइए ए खुसरवी ज़ीह जालो जलाल, आपके हुक्म से इस बाजार में लाई गई, आपकी राह में आंखों को बिछाती हैं हम, किसकी आवाज है, किसने पुकारा है हमें, तुम हो ए फसले बहारा की कवारी तितली. Next, please. Thank you. Yes, thank you. So there is a long poem after these verses, and the poem too could not become a part of Riaz's sole collection. It was published because the collection was published after he passed away in 1958. Another poem, of Ahmed Riaz is as follows. रक्सा है गरसंगी का एहसास मुश्तरक, रक्सा है गरसंगी का एहसास मुश्तरक, डॉलर की सरजमी से मेरे झोंपड़े तलक. Ahmed Riaz founded the Muslim League in Moga and became its self-styled Secretary General. Next, please. So now Riaz was systematically in the Muslim League too, and as well the Communist Party of India. One day he took his nephew Dr. Anis to the agricultural market of Moga. There was a big billboard of the All India Communist Party on the building there, and a red flag with hammer and sickle was waving on the roof. Riaz said that this too is my party, pointing to the hammer and sickle. Ahmed Riaz conveyed the message of the Muslim League by touring the far-off villages of Moga. Next, please. Now, this was also a time when the atmosphere of India had become very, very communalized. The Muslim League on one hand, the Congress Party on another. So Riaz's brother sent him along with the nephew, Dr. Anis, to Ludhiana. This was March 1947. In September, Riaz's family set out for Chaburji quarters in Lahore after hiring tongas and carts. Now, this situation, this hurly-burly leading up to what we call the partition rights have been narrated by poets, with bitter, sour and sweet memories of those very days. But what is that poetry which does not highlight the events and conditions of its time? If you read Ahmed Riaz now, he could not become very famous, but his poetry has the thunderous noise of Sahil Ludhianvi as well, and the sympathy does not have a parallel as well. Ahmed Riaz, I can say, is even more loud-voiced than Sahil, since he himself passed through this agony. Next, please. According to Ahmed Riaz, I'm going to read this another couplet. Just a minute, please. जब शामों सहर की गर्दिश से घबराकर गिरने लगता हूँ, जब शामों सहर की गर्दिश से घबराकर गिरने लगता हूँ, अपनों के खलूसे दिल की कसम बेगाने संभाला करते हैं. This is a couplet of Ahmed Riaz, and of course now Pakistan had come into existence, and with the advent of Pakistan, the poetry of Ahmed Riaz also assumed a new color. Please, look at this couplet of a ghazal by Ahmed Riaz. आते कभी ना अपने गुलिस्तान को छोड़कर, आते कभी ना अपने गुलिस्तान को छोड़कर, हम एक हसीन बहार के धोखे में आ गए. So, voicing the sentiments of, basically all the progressive poets upon these events of 1947. Next. Okay, thank you. Thanks. So in March 1949, Riaz's brother was transferred to Rawalpindi, and Riaz was handed over the abandoned house of the Hindus in Pindi as well, so that he too could become a man of property. But when was Ahmed Riaz ever like that? When did he ever care about property? A few months later, Ahmed Riaz left the house unlocked to go to Chak Jhumra near Lailpur. Now, Chak Jhumra was a place where there was no recreational place other than the railway station. Neither there was a good education nor the environment. This was the most difficult period of Riaz's life. Riaz became the editor of the Gharib Akhbar, literally the newspaper called Gharib, destitute, the poor editor of a destitute newspaper. His monthly salary, sorry, can you go back? Thank you. His monthly salary was just 100 rupees. Next, please. Now the office of Gharib was in a big bazaar near the clock tower of Lailpur. ये जो लाइलपुर का घंटा घर है जिसको हम फैसलाबाद अब कहते हैं. It's a very famous landmark in that city. The office was nothing but an old table and 3 or 4 broken chairs. In front of the office was Jahangir Palau, which still exists to this day. Very famous treat of Lailpur. It was renowned everywhere in that city. The owner was probably from Ludhiana. He would entertain Riaz at night daily. A plate of leftover rice. It was very much free. So the Ahmed Riaz's friend was a real connoisseur of learning and literature, apparently. The poetry also carried on. Some poetry was published on the cover page of the journals Savera, Adwe Latif, and Imroz. Next, please. So Ahmed Riaz continued his daily movement by train and then on the Tonga for rides. And between his office and Chak Jhumra, eventually he contracted tuberculosis and he began to spit blood, and because of his health issues, he lost his job. Next, please. He was brought to Lahore on the assurance that his paternal nephew, Dr. Anis, who worked in the Mayo Hospital there, would treat him and he would be admitted easily. Dr. Anis had become a doctor from King Edward Medical College that very year. And he was still a house surgeon, meaning a junior doctor. So Dr. Anis took him to the TB in charge, Dr. Abdul Aziz, who behaved with a very cold attitude. He said, "Why have you brought Ahmed Riaz here? He will die in a few days." And Riaz returned in a few days, losing heart. Though his nephew's maternal aunt greatly attended to him in the Gandhi Square garden in Gawal Mandi, after a few days, Ahmed Riaz passed away at the age of 36, December 28, 1958. So, according to Riaz's own words, "Hazaro Riaz is andhere khandar mein, fakat markadon ke nishan ban chuke." So now I would want to present some extracts from the poetry of Ahmed Riaz. These verses were published in his collection Mauj-e Khoon, and I actually happen to have one of the very few surviving copies of the sole collection of Ahmed Riaz, called Mauj-e Khoon. Ahmed Riaz had repeatedly asked his nephew that he would have the following verse of Maulana Rumi, written on the first inner page, of the book. Riaz instructed his nephew about the meaning of this verse, that many, durations had passed. Look at this verse from Maulana Rumi. Base guzasht ke Adam dari sarai kohun. Base guzasht ke Adam dari sarai kohun. Misale dana tahe sange asiya budast. Meaning, man is being crushed like a grain in this old inn beneath the millstones. Next, please. Thank you. So this verse from Rumi is complete commentary on Ahmad Riaz's poetry. What was said by Rumi 1,000 years ago is still true and perhaps will remain so till the day of judgment. Unfortunately, Ahmad Riaz could not have this verse published on his collection of poems. Though his ghazals are very beautiful, but basically he is a poet of the poem. When progressive poets wanted to say something in detail, they could not fit their thoughts into the narrow passages of the ghazal. Ahmad Nadeem Kasmi, the great poet and short story writer, wrote a detailed preface on Riaz's book, and this is a stamp of authentication on the poetry, artistic skill, descriptive style, and sympathetic heart of Ahmad Riaz. Now, newcomers like myself are unable to critique Ahmad Riaz's poetry. Thank you. A few extracts of Riaz's poetry are presented here. Now, the impression from some long poems will very much be felt by reading them completely, but it is not possible to present the entire poetry in this short span of 15 minutes. Unfortunately, the book Mauj-e Khoon by Ahmad Riaz is unavailable in the market. Therefore, it is not within the reach of readers. Perhaps some knowledge-friendly institution may want to republish it. This is a centenary year after all. Without this, the poetry too will be buried in an unknown and untraceable grave. Next, please. If you look at his poem Aqwam-e Mutahida, United Nations, it's a really long poem, but every word of it is true even today. His heart was very much melancholy at the partition of Punjab, though he was a strong supporter of the partition of India and an active volunteer in this respect. Ye jo uski nazam hai Chhata Darya, I mean, it just sounds like what Sahir might have written or any other progressive poet. But what was done by the new rulers in Pakistan after independence, how could it be liked by such a sensitive artist like Ahmad Riaz? In another poem, Tawaif or Shair, the prostitute and courtesan. Next, please. Thank you. Please look at these verses. जहां का ज़ौक़े तवाइफियत हर एक हसी शय खरीदता है, तू कैफे नगमात बेचती है, मैं हुस्न अफकार बेचता हूँ, तेरा तकद्दुस मेरी शराफत ना तेरे बस में ना मेरे बस में, तू रूह मगरूर बेचती है, मैं ज़हन खुददार बेचता हूँ. Next, please. End quote. So also he has written another important poem on the great, writer Saadat Hasan Manto, who, like Ahmad Riaz, passed away very early in his life. Ahmad Riaz has written a poem, Azim Fankar Manto. Just have a look at his the final lines of his poem. Iska fan loho kalam ki kainat, iska fan mahol ka akse jameel. End quote. Then in another poem, Janoon se khirat tak, from obsession to reason, Ahmad Riaz gives greater importance to reason than obsession. In that, obsession can very much take towards death, but cannot defeat reason. Next, please. Then in another very long poem, Azmat-e-Asia, Chin, this was left incomplete. Now, the translation of this poem was published in the Chinese language in the People's Daily, but unfortunately, there is no record of it available. So one cannot say with confidence. But the poem is very long, and a few of its titles reveal about Ahmad Riaz's vast study on revolutionary movements. देखें इनके उन्वानात देखें इस नज़म के. सहर से पहले 7 फरवरी का कत्ले आम, अफ्यूनी जंगें, 30 मई की तहरीक. This is the account of the rebellion of the workers in Shanghai against the English and Japanese factory owners on the 30th of May 1935. Now the two following verses are the whole explanation of the poetry of Ahmad Riaz. Next, please. ये देखिए अपने बारे में क्या कह रहे हैं वो. मेरा हर शेर है आदम के तकाज़ों का अमी, मेरा फन जागती तारीख का पैगंबर है. मेरा हर शेर है आदम के तकाज़ों का अमी, मेरा फन जागती तारीख का पैगंबर है. एंड देन अगेन, वही कहा है जो महसूस कर लिया है रियाज, वही कहा है जो महसूस कर लिया है रियाज, मेरी बेआज में हूरों के वाक़यात नहीं. End quote. So whatever Ahmad Riaz wrote, he worked very hard at it. I do not have the stature of a critic of Urdu poetry, but Ahmad Nadeem Kasmi, who was a towering writer of the PWA, has shed light on his poetry in the best manner. And Faiz Ahmad Faiz too has affirmed it. And these opinions of these great giants adorn the pages of Mauj-e Khoon. Next, please. Thank you. The book, as I mentioned before, Mauj-e Khoon, was published by the Anjuman-e Yadgar-e Riaz, in 1961 from Lailpur. Now it is unavailable in the market. It is out of print. Kasmi deemed him a unique poet who passed away youthful at the age of 36. Neither age stood by him nor conditions. He could not stay in Lahore in that the fame would have been sealed. मतलब जो भी लाहौर में आता है कहते हैं कि लाहौर बनाता है, हर जो भी लाहौर आता है उसकी किस्मत बदल जाती है. And I would not have had to write this very long essay and then present it in front of you in his centenary year, you know. Next, please. So Ahmad Riaz marked a new chapter in poetry. This poetry was no less than Sahil Ludhianvi in any manner. Though Ahmad Riaz's education was limited, but he had unbelievable command over language, a gay and playful disposition, affection for all, friendship with children. He was empty-handed, penniless, but wealthy by disposition. An amazing willpower within a thin and weak body. He was a free man. Unfortunately, very few people talked ever about him. Next, please. Thank you. It is surprising to note that one of the founding fathers of Urdu literary criticism in the subcontinent, Khalilur Rahman Azmi, in his definitive treatment of progressive writers movement, labels Riaz among a host of other poets who he thinks wrote a few good things in the beginning and from whom many expectations were associated. But then these poets wrote abundant poetry on China, Japan, Burma, Malaya, Indonesia, Korea, Egypt, Turkey, Iraq, Iran, Tunis, etc., and did not spare any country. However, if we look at Mauj Khoon, it contains only 3 poems which can be said to be on China in particular and Asia and the Middle East in general. So our critic, Khalilur Rahman Azmi, did not change his opinion about Riaz even after Ahmad Riaz's collection was published posthumously and Azmi's own dissertation was published as a book in 1972 as well as in a subsequent reissued editions. Alas, even as perceptive a critic as Khalilur Rahman Azmi could not see Riaz's individuality. Surely he missed seeing in Riaz's work what his senior contemporaries like Faiz Ahmad Faiz, Ahmad Nadeem Qasmi, Manzoor Hussain Shore, and Muzaffar Ali Sayyid did see after reading Riaz's work. So in this essay, with the invaluable help of his nephew, Dr. Anis, I have tried to highlight those aspects of Riaz's life which a child sees in his favorite elder from his own eye. Ahmad Riaz died before his time, and perhaps a trace of his grave too does not exist. Some people are not mere warriors of language and pen in the promotion of their thoughts, but have passed through this suffering themselves or mold their personality into this continuous agony, and their writings become true and sincere. This is not the task of hypocrites. Next, please. In the end, I would like to close with this beautiful poem called Ilhaq, जिसमें अहमद रियाज जो है वो हिंदुस्तान के तरक्की पसंद अदीबों और शायरों को बुला रहे हैं. और क्योंकि हम ये सेमिनार भी आज तरक्की पसंदी पे ही कर रहे हैं, तो इट वुड नॉट बी आउट ऑफ करेक्टर कि इस नज़म पे मैं अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन का अख्ताम करूं. इस नज़म का नाम है इल्हाक और अहमद रियाज ने इसका इंतसाब किया है हिंदुस्तान के तरक्की पसंद अदीबों और शायरों के नाम. साथियों, हाथ बढ़ाओ के हैं हम आज भी एक, कौन कर सकता है तकसीम अदब की जागीर. साथियों, हाथ बढ़ाओ के हैं हम आज भी एक, कौन कर सकता है तकसीम अदब की जागीर. कौन अफकार की किंदील बुझा सकता है, कौन कर सकता है एहसास की शिद्दत को असीर. शहर बांटे गए तकसीम हुई हैं गलियां, कैसो लैला की मोहब्बत का फसूं खत्म हुआ. कितने चेहरे हैं जिन्हें देख ना पाऊंगा कभी, कितनी आंखों की लताफत का फसूं खत्म हुआ. सुबह आजादी ये नौ फूट चुकी है लेकिन हालो माजी के घरोंदों में अंधेरा है वही. बरके खिरमन कहीं कांटे कहीं दस्ते गुलची, फिक्रे जाना गमे इंसान गमे दुनिया है वही. अब भी बदले नहीं आदाब जहांदारी के, अब भी इंसान की परवाज में हायल है गुबार. अब भी सरकश है हवादिस की हवा के झोंके, अब भी मौजों के तलातुम में छुपे हैं मंझधार. आज भी जीस्त के दोराहे पे बैठे हैं उदास, मुश्तरक दर्द के मारे हुए घबराए हुए. हम ना काफिर है ना मोमिन ना अफलाक नशी, कहतो इफलास के रोंदे हुए ठुकराए हुए. साथियों आओ, अधूरे हैं अभी ये सपने, साथियों आओ अभी काम बहुत बाकी है. अपने बेदार तकाजों का फिर ऐलान करें, जिंदगी अब भी हमें सिर्फ हमें तकती है. और मक्ता देखिए इस नज़म का. साथियों, हाथ बढ़ाओ के हैं हम आज भी एक, कौन कर सकता है एहसास की शिद्दत को असीर. साथियों, हाथ बढ़ाओ के हैं हम आज भी एक, कौन कर सकता है एहसास की शिद्दत को असीर, शहर बट सकते हैं, हो सकते हैं गलियां तकसीम, कौन कर सकता है तकसीम अदब की जागीर, शहर बट सकते हैं, हो सकती हैं गलियां तकसीम, कौन कर सकता है तकसीम अदब की जागीर. And end quote. So with this resounding call to the progressive writers of India and Pakistan by Ahmed Riaz, which was published in 1958, I would like to end my presentation. And once again, I would like to thank you very much for giving this ordinary scribe from Lahore a chance to represent the PWA at your seminar, and to remember a forgotten poet in his centenary year who I think deserves better from critics and readers alike. Thank you very much. और लाहौर से एक दफा फिर आपको सलाम और आदाब, बहुत न्याज के साथ.
Shukriya. Thank you, Dr. Naeem, for your presentation. Can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Yes.
Right. Thank you for your presentation. So I just have a few quick observations since we're running out of time. We won't have scope for a detailed discussion on the poet, but I'm just wondering what actually caused his disappearance, or led to the fact that he was not recognized in the larger scenario. Maybe even within Pakistan, what could have been his critical engagements? What was his relationship with the contemporary progressives in Pakistan? Which led to his being sidelined in the within the nationalist discourse of Pakistan? Maybe this is something that you could have you could just highlight upon and say in brief.
Yes, thank you so much. This is a very important question, and we are struggling with this question all the time, isn't it? I mean, and Ahmed Riaz is not the first, neither the last poet who has shared this fate. I mean, unfortunately, हम एक बड़ी incestuous दुनिया में रहते हैं. ये lobbies की दुनिया है. यहाँ पे एक poet जो 36 साल की उम्र में मर जाए, उसकी बीवी भी कुछ सालों बाद ट्यूबरक्लोसिस से मर गई, उनकी कोई औलाद नहीं थी, उनका तो अब कब्र भी नहीं है चक झुमरा में. जब उनके नेफ्यू वहां पे गए, आप ये देखें कि जब इनका जनाजा हुआ तो इनके डॉक्टर ने जनाजा अटेंड करने की भी इजाजत नहीं. उन्होंने कहा या जनाजे पे चले जाओ या जॉब कर लो. डॉक्टर थे तो वो बेचारे जॉब करते रहे, हाउस जॉब, क्योंकि नहीं जा. तो वो जब कई साल बाद वो चक झुमरा गए तो एक मट्टी की ढेरी पड़ी हुई थी वहां पे जिधर सपोजिटली इनका ग्रेव होना चाहिए था. तो ये एक बड़ी टेलिंग एक चीज है कि इनका फिजिकली भी जो अब नामो निशान है वो खत्म हो गया. अनफॉर्चुनेटली दिस हैपेंस, एंड who should we blame? There is no one person to blame. अब आप देखें कई बड़े बड़े पोइट भी हैं, वो भी, उनका भी हम नाम नहीं लेते, उनकी सेंटेनरीज भी गुजर जाती हैं. अनफॉर्चुनेटली इस तरह के सेमिनार्स में फिर हमें मौका मिलता है कि हम ऐसे राइटर्स पे, और मुझे भी इनके बारे में बड़ी एक्सीडेंटली पता चला. एक बहुत बड़े उर्दू के राइटर हमारे यहाँ मुस्तनसर हुसैन तारड़, उनके साथ ये नेफ्यू वॉक करते हैं सुबह मॉडल टाउन पार्क में. उन्होंने कहीं ये वाकया अपने चचा का सुनाया मुस्तनसर साहब को, और क्योंकि उनको पता था कि मैं तरक्की पसंद तंजीम का सदर हूँ लाहौर में, तो उन्होंने कहा कि दिस इज अ पोएट और उसकी तुम कुछ पोएम्स पढ़ो, वो छठा दरिया फॉर एग्जांपल. तो ये तो बिल्कुल साहिर लगता है, हालांकि बिल्कुल साहिर नहीं है वो, क्योंकि इनकी अपनी एक आवाज है. जैसे कि मैंने कुछ आपको सुनाया इनका कलाम, हिज वॉइस इज टोटली डिस्टिंक्ट. तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली इसमें मीडिया का भी बड़ा कसूर है. अब जॉन एलिया जैसे पोइट्स बहुत मशहूर हो गए हैं, इसमें किसी का कसूर, और अगेन इसमें किसी का कसूर नहीं है. बात यह है कि ये फैड होता है. आई थिंक द वर्क इटसेल्फ स्पीक्स. अगर काम में जान है तो वो फ्लोट करेगा, चाहे लॉबी हो या ना हो, पैट्रोनेज मिले या ना मिले. अब ये जो किताब है मौजे खून, इसको हम दोबारा पब्लिश कराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. ये एक मतलब आई हैव वन ऑफ वेरी फ्यू कॉपीज व्हिच इज अवेलेबल. ये भी मुझे उनके नेफ्यू ने दी थी तोहफतन, क्योंकि वो नहीं, अब देखें वो अपनी तो 4-5 नज़में 4-5 कलेक्शन छपवा चुके हैं. उनके पास इतना टाइम भी नहीं था कि अपने चचा की वो वॉल्यूम को छपवा सके. आप सत्यम ज़रीफी जरा देखिए, उन्होंने मुझे ये बात कही है कि आप पब्लिश कराएं तो कराएं, वो खुद कोई एफर्ट नहीं लेंगे. व्हाट डज दिस टेल यू अबाउट द लिटरेरी कल्चर ऑफ द सबकॉन्टिनेंट? वो उनके चचा हैं, ही इज 82, हिज सोल सर्वाइविंग रिलेटिव. उन्होंने अपनी किताबें मुझे 1-2 दी अपनी शायरी की, लेकिन साथ में उन्होंने मुझे ये भी दे दी और कहा कि आप अगर कुछ कर सकते हैं तो आप करें. तो हम तो करेंगे और कर रहे हैं. और एज अ ट्रांसलेटर भी मैं I am actually translating this into English. तो मैं मतलब एक शख्स जितनी कोशिश कर सकता है किसी forgotten poet को याद करवाने की, और फिर obviously आप जैसी तंजीमें हैं, once again थैंक यू वेरी मच कि आपने मुझे मौका दिया कि मैं इस पोइट के ऊपर जो हूं मैं बात कर सकूं, और कम से कम और ये वो शायर है जो कि साहिर के जमाने में उनके जितना मकबूल शायर था, और उनकी नज़्में उस जमाने के तमाम तरक्की पसंद जरीदों में छपती थी। अब आप जरा सितम ज़रीफ़ी देखें कि हम जैसे लोगों को खंगालनी पड़ती हैं ये और आंख ताज़ी के कि कहाँ कहाँ इनकी नज़्में, इनका कोई कंटेम्प्रेरी जिंदा नहीं है। कभी कभार कोई जिक्र होता है कि हाँ लायलपुर में एक शायर था, दीवाना शायर, उसका नाम अहमद रियाज था, वो बड़ा मकबूल था मुशायरों में, हिलाकर रख देता था मुशायरों को, और फिर उसकी वो नज़म जो है खानकाहें, जिसका मैंने थोड़ा सा पाठ पढ़ा। अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये फेट हर शायर के और राइटर की हो सकती है, मतलब ये खाली अहमद रियाज का, ये हमारे कल्चर का नोहा है। दिस इज अ कमेंट ऑन द स्टेट ऑफ थिंग्स इन आवर कल्चर, कि हम एक मुर्दा परस्त माशरा है, मगर शायद मुर्दा परस्ती की इजाजत अहमद रियाज जैसे पोइट को भी इजाजत नहीं है मुर्दा परस्ती की। तो मकसद यही होता है, मतलब कैन आई टेल यू, दिस इज सेंटेनरी ईयर एंड दिस इज द फर्स्ट पब्लिक प्रेजेंटेशन आई एम डूइंग ऑन अहमद रियाज, मतलब आप के फोरम से मैं कर रहा हूं, तो इंटरेस्ट की भी बात है। अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये बड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स नेक्सस है, तो इसमें वो लोग जो अदब के ठेकेदार बने हुए हैं, सबसे ज्यादा उनकी जिम्मेदारी है। जो लॉबीज बनी हुई है, जो हमारे सो कॉल्ड क्रिटिक्स हैं, देखिए वो भी तो एक शायर को बनाते हैं ना, बिगाड़ते भी वही हैं, बनाते भी वही हैं, मतलब वो शाबाश भी दे सकते हैं, तो ये उनका भी काम है। अब मैं तो कोई नक्काद नहीं हूं, तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये कहानी रिपीट होती जाएगी। अहमद रियाज और बहुत से हैं जिनका नाम भी अभी नहीं है, वो कहीं ना कहीं दफन होंगे, हर रोज खून थूकते हुए मर जाते हैं वो। तो मेरे ख्याल में अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये एक नेवर एंडिंग टेल है। आई एम श्योर इंडिया में भी ऐसे बहुत से
Absolutely. There are poets
कहानियां
in
दफन
India
हुई
as well, scattered across different places, parts of the country who have not yet been recognized for their efforts. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Naeem, for the excellent presentation. And I guess it's time we moved to the next presentation. Thank you, Dr. Raza Naeem, for your
Thank you very much.
participation. And now we move to the third speaker. Right. So the next presenter is Dr. Piyush Raval, and he is presenting on the topic Swapnastha as a progressive poet and a short story writer in Gujarati. And Dr. Piyush Raval is an assistant professor at the Department of English in Sardar Patel University. So over to you, Dr. Raval, and may I request you to please conclude your presentation in about 15 minutes from now. So thank you so much, and over to you, Dr. Raval.
Okay, so around 125.
By 125.
Okay. So are you able to listen to me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
we can hear you.
Yes,
Please
are able
start
to
your
hear.
presentation. Please
Okay,
start.
fine. Please put me on the screen. So my paper is entitled Swapnastha as a progressive poet and a short story writer in Gujarati. In view of the absence of any full-length scholarly account of progressive writers' movement in Gujarati, undertaken or even sparse account of it found in the available histories of the progressive writers movement in India, and though not many, but there are few books on the progressive writers movement written in English and in Urdu. And Sajjad Jahiz Roshnai itself is a kind of historical account from the horse's mouth of the movement. The attempt in the present paper made to draw historical journey of the progressive writers movement in Gujarati, partly while examining the progressive views of Swapnastha as a writer and his contribution to progressive writers movement, though which was very limited, but as we have talked about the neglected progressive writers, Swapnastha would also be put into that type of category as far as the mainstream literature of Gujarat is concerned. Gujarati literature responded to Marxist thought in full-fledged way after 1930 through literary forms like prose, drama, and poetry. A considerable amount of the impact of progressive writism movement on Gujarati literature was also found. And I should also begin with the fact that the presidential address of the first All India Progressive Writers Conference in Lucknow, which was made by Premchand, but Premchand himself had suggested the names of two persons, one Dr. Zakir Hussain and another was K.M. Munshi, who was a Gujarati literati and a politician. Premchand had supported Munshi's proposal about the formation of a National Literature Board, and both Premchand and K.M. Munshi, because Hans did not have much financial support, it was going out of its economic resources. Therefore, Munshi had proposed to bring out in a joint editorship the issue of Hans, and therefore the 1935 edition of Hans, which is 120 pages, is a joint publication by K.M. Munshi and Munshi Premchand. Panna Nayak, a Gujarati diasporic author, traces such Marxist impact on Gujarati literature and divides the writers of this period into three categories. One, the writers ideologically committed to the radicalism of socialist thought and dogma. Second, the writers satisfied with mild expression of indignation at social injustice and exploitation. And third, the writers who refused to be drawn out of the ivory tower of art for art's sake. Sundaram, Umashankar Joshi, Bogilal Gandhi, Bakulesh, Jayant Khatri, Sanat Kumar Vin, Swapnastha, etc. are considered progressive writers in Gujarati, falling in category 1, which is of writers who are producing politically and ideologically motivated literature under the impact of socialism. Deeply affected by the socialist thought and breaking away from Gandhism, the young poets like Sundaram, Umashankar Joshi, and Bogilal Gandhi produced progressive writing in Gujarati on the subjects of workers, peasants, and revolutions. Of the three, Joshi, who got exposure to socialism and Marxism during his imprisonment in Yerwada jail in Pune in 1931, is regarded as not only the leading spokesman of the leftist phenomenon, but also the very initiator of progressive movement in Gujarati by setting up the Progressive Writers Association in Gujarati in 1936. During his brief leftist phase, Joshi produced poetry of social concern and commitment in collections such as Gangotri, published in 1934, and Nishit, published in 1939. The latter, which is Nishit, shared the Jnanpith Award in 1969, and through such socio-realistic poems, stimulated socio-political thinking among Gujarati intellectuals and artists. In one of his interviews, Joshi reminisces his relation with progressive writers movement thus, I quote, "I was one of the pioneers of the progressive movement in Indian literature. I vividly recall the preliminary meeting held in the office of a Gujarati daily in Bombay. When Gorky died, we took out a procession in Bombay. All this was also intended as an affront to the foreign rulers and as a means of enhancing social consciousness among the writers," unquote. Joshi also underlined the significance of the movement by saying, I quote again, "Progressivism weaned the writers from romanticism," which is there in Munshi Premchand's manifesto of the movement. Progressivism weaned the writers from romanticism, and for a time, the kokil, the moon, and the stars were tabooed, and the mill chimney, the outcast, and the prostitute were heavily leaned upon for poetic sustenance, unquote. In his best-known progressive poem, Jataragni, Joshi warns the oppressors and exploiters that the fire of hunger in the empty stomach of the hungry would burst into conflagration, reducing all their palaces and gardens into ashes without leaving a trace. I read the Gujarati and the English translation of the poem, since it's the representative one. Racho racho ambar chumbi mandiro, ucho chano mahal chano minara, मडो स्फटिके लटकाओ झुमरो, रंगे उड़ाओ जड़ना फुवारा, रचो रचो चंदन वाटिकाओ, उंडा तणाओ नवरंग घुम्मटो, ने कई क्रीडांगण चंद्रशाड़ा रचो भले, अंतर रुंदती शिला ए केम भावी बहुकाળ साक्षे, दरिद्रनी ए उपहास लीला, संकेलवा कोटिग जीव फैलतो, भूख्या जनोनो जठराग्नि जागसे, खंडेरीनी भस्म कड़ी न लाजसे. And that line, which is very important, I read the English translation, which was published in Mahfil. The fire of hunger build up temples that kiss the sky, tall palaces and minaras, adorn them with marble and glass, with fountains flushed with hue, plant gardens of sandals stretched deep, domes of many shades and high, moon palaces and play hills. How long will time abide? The stones that clutter filling, the poor's million-tongue fire of hunger will awaken to devour this ridicule of want, leaving not even ashen specks for one to find. And there are very representative poems of the progressive mold, which I don't have the time, so I won't read. But I just mentioned the titles like Gulam, Dhobi, Mochi, Anabrahma, and Panchali. Sundaram, another poet, also published important poetry collections like Kavya Mangal in 1933 and Vasudha in 1939 during his socialist realist phase. The poem, which is a taboo word called Bangadi, used for the untouchable woman, echoes the unfortunate lot of an untouchable woman like Mukraj Anand's Untouchable and Krishan Chandra's Kalu Bhangi. The organization of fourth All India Progressive Writers Conference during 25 to 25 May 1943 in Bombay also led to the creation of the Gujarati section of PWA. The Progressive Writers Association in Gujarati published important collection of progressive writings in 2 volumes entitled, which are very difficult to find today, Sahitya and Pragati, Literature and Progress, in English translation, in 1940 and 1943 respectively. After the dissociation of Joshi and Sundaram from the progressive writers movement, between the 2 writers who remain connected to the movement, and therefore I'm talking about the younger writers and the one which is there in my title of presentation, Swapnastha. The 2 writers who remain connected to the movement after the old generation goes, Swapnastha was one besides Bhogilal Gandhi. The selected poems and short stories of Bhanu Bhai R. Vyas, therefore Swapnastha is a pen name used by the person whose original name is Bhanu Bhai Vyas, known by his pen name Swapnastha in Gujarati, written during the progressive period in India, are examined here. In his 1970 introduction to the collected works of Swapnastha entitled Chirvira, Joshi regards him as the product of the socialist thinking of 1930s, which was pan-Indian. The socialist temper of progressive writers can be seen in his poetry collections such as Vinashna Ansho and Maya, 1938, Dharti, 1946, Lal Surya, 1968, and the posthumous collected work Chirvira, 1973. He also wrote short story collections like Dinarat, 1946, and Dhuninapan, 1950, and the novel on the freedom struggle called Janvi in 1953. He co-edited important collections of progressive writing entitled Sahitya and Sanskar in 1944 and Sahitya and Pragati, volume 1 and 2 in 1940 and 1945 respectively, in addition to producing Gujarati translations of Maxim Gorky's selected Russian stories in Punamna Poina, and it's a rare work that he has translated. Turgenev's 1862 Russian novel, Fathers and Sons as Paltato Zamano in 1957. He was the first to produce the gist of Marxist philosophy in Gujarati in his book, Marxvad Mood Ane Sar Tattva. He also edited and worked for progressive magazines like Vande Mataram and Sanskar. His socialist realist literature encompassed the touching stories of uncommonness of common people and the marginalized sections of society, women, peasants, farmers, fishermen, and show compassion for them by expressing themes of exploitation, poverty, inequality, injustice, social change, etc. In addition to writing poems of protest and rebellion, Swapnastha, like major progressives, imbibe the problems of the whole world and express great love and sympathy for humanity at large. Now examine some
Dr.
of the...
Raval, could you please come to your conclusion?
I'm in the middle section of my presentation. So if you give me 5 minutes.
Please do. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Swapnastha produced poetry collections such as Vinashna Ansho and Maya, Dharti, 1946, all I have talked about, Lal Surya, which is difficult to find. I discuss his poems from Chirvira in light of progressivism. But before that, some information about an important long poem which he produced in 1038 line entitled Dharti, published in 1946, which is about the unity and kinship between human life and the earth. The poem makes references to writers like Walt Whitman and Maxim Gorky, establishment of the American democracy, the dictatorship of the proletariat in the Soviet Union, Chinese Revolution, Tibet and its sacrifices, the farmer rebellion in Malabar in 1942, miserable condition of the marginalized class, development of capitalism, fascism in Germany, which was also critiqued by Faiz Ahmad Faiz and some of the progressives, exploited human race and freedom of India from the British. Swapnastha in the poem expresses optimism about the progress of human society through the efforts of the revolutionary masses awakened by socialism. In the posthumous collection, Chirvira, Swapnastha published poems such as Hu Ek Vruksha, Gai Utho, Jag Gayako, Ga Eva Gan, Uttar De, Ai Naujawan, Shahiwad Ne Padkar, Aghat Kar, Manavtana Ijan, Kada Tada, etc., which were socialist and progressive in nature. Symbolic of Swapnastha as a progressive poet, in the poem Hu Ek Vruks, I am a tree, the poet compares himself to a tree where the birds from all the world take shelter and sing songs of their everyday experience. The poem murmurs these songs whole day, to which the world listens with joy and woe. A poem which seems like a slogan to be used by the progressive, like the song of the laborers, Mazduro Ka Geet, by Majaz Lakhnavi. Ga Eva Gan sings songs as such. Swapnastha expresses his poetic urge to sing songs about the brutality inflicted on humanity by nationalists and zealots, called as the murderers of humanity, and awaken the human race through his songs. In the poem Ai Naujawan, I'll read just one or 2 points, without which this won't be complete, but other I generally describe. In the poem Ai Naujawan, O young man, the poet addresses the young man and asks him to sing with him songs of freedom, peace, progress, exploitation of the downtrodden, and the atrocity of the British Raj. The poem Shahiwad Na Padkar, Challenge to Imperialism, written on the occasion of Navy Rebellion in 1946, calls for the end of the brutal Raj, which only knows language of the gun. The common lot has awakened now and unafraid of his gun, wants to sacrifice their lives for freedom from the Raj. And I read this poem. Most of the poems of Swapnastha are not translated, but through the echoes of it, the sense and the meaning of it can be conveyed.
You have
Sahiba,
2 more minutes. You have 2 more minutes.
Yes, okay, I'll read one
Yeah.
poem.
Yeah.
સિતમગર તું બોલે છે બંદૂકની ભાષા, નારીને બચ્ચાની હત્યાની ભાષા, ને ફેંકે છે તારા જ લઈ કેરા પાસા. અમે આજ ઉઠ્યા સમંદર છે રૂઠ્યા, ખડક કેદ કેરા બધા ધ્રુજી ઉઠ્યા, કાળી દિવાલોની તૂટે છે કાયા, થથરે કા શાહી મુરાદોની જાયા. સિતમગર સદીઓ ત્યાં માર્યા છે ફાફા, લીધા ધન લીધા જન લાખો જહાના, તે તારી જ કાઢી એ દુનિયા પીછાણી, નથી જાણી જાગી અવામોની વાણી, કદી જાલિમોએ ઘડી છેલ્લી જાણી. હવે જો ચડે જંગ આઝાદી વીરો, કરોડો કરો ગોતો તારું ગળું જો, આ એક એક હિન્દી છે આજે અધીરો, ખુનીઓનો આખરનો અંજામ બીજો, પ્રપંચી દુનિયાના બદલે કાવેશો, બચ્ચા બારી કેવી બચાવે અમીરો. And finally he asks for the end of the Raj. ખબરદાર આ જનતાના લોહીના અક્કિક બુંદે, ઉઠે આજ 100 સપૂતો આ હિંદે, ભલે બંદૂકો હો ભલે કાળ બોમ્બો, ઉઠી આજ જનતા કરોડો કરોડો, પ્રજા એકતાનો ઉપાડ્યો હથોડો, ખતમ શાહીવાદ ખતમ આજ તોડો. And there are few other poems similarly of that type, but I don't have the time, so I don't read them. I come to the stories, since I have only 2 minutes. The stories in Din Raat and Dhuni Pan deal with issues like exploitation of the laborers, suffering of women and widows, poverty, freedom struggle, colonialism, partition, etc. And since the other participant talked about partition, progressive writers towards the end of the movement had also experienced and talked about partition. So there is one rare story in this collection, of which I give a bit gist. The story Urus is located in the tumultuous time of the freedom struggle and the people being caught in the political gamut between Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. The conversation between 3 Muslim friends, Muhammad, Usman, and Rafiq, amidst the atmosphere of Urs about whether the Muslim community should politically align with Congress which they perceived as dominated by Hindus, Muslim League, or the British. Their final decision is to stay with the poor and raise their concerns in the freedom fight. And I come to the conclusion of this. In most of the poems of Sapnastha, there is a strong evocation of his political alignment with communism. And therefore, in one of the story called Afar Ra, there is the leader of the labor union called Madhav, who sacrifices his life, and he has slogans about the ownership which must die and the Mazdoor union which should remain forever. I come to the later part, which is the decline of the progressive writers movement in Gujarati, as it happened in Urdu and other languages of India. So my final statement, just give me. With major progressive writers drifting to different directions, the movement declined or did not found a firm base in Gujarati for various reasons, such as the shift in political interest after World War II, the lack of sharpness of progressive outlook, the degeneration of style and aesthetic interest in the movement, the rise of new poetry in Gujarati, and the strong Gandhian influence on people and literature. As Talat Ahmad views, I quote, Gandhi himself was quite hostile to progressive leftist ideology, as he felt it was anti-religious and unsuitable to Indian conditions. He also held it to be a violent creed and therefore inherently evil, unquote. In one of his interviews, Joshi reflects on the decay of progressivism in Gujarati, and this is an important quotation for reasons of the decay and the end of the movement. As the decade came to a close, we rang down the curtain on progressivism, though not before we had produced 2 volumes of Sahitya and Pragati in Gujarati. It was not a question of my or anybody's dissociating myself or himself from the progressive movement. It was a corporate decision with a communist writer friend and also participating in it. We all thought that the movement had served its purpose. With the starting of World War II, there was a shift in interest. Again, without predilection for more thought stuff as demanded by Professor Thakur, and with what our preoccupation with progressive material, some of us turned out indifferent essays in verse devoid of aesthetic interest. There was a sharp reaction from younger writers, especially Prahlad Parekh's Bari Bahar, Across the Window, written in 1940, steers clear of any reference to contemporary problems. In my preface to the book, I showed how compelling this poem was. So the pendulum has swung back in the other direction, leaving us, the progressives, high and dry, as it were, unquote. Thus, Gujarati literature, to conclude with the views of the diasporic poet Panna Nayak, who also did wonderful work with Carlo Coppola and published articles on the progressive movement, also about the influence of Marxism on Gujarati literature in Mehfil. Panna Nayak Gujarati literature, to conclude with the views of Panna Nayak, responded to Marxist thought and practice in a different way. And Marxism in Gujarati literature is part of the social awareness that was new to traditional India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naik, for your presentation. And I wish we could have had more time to listen to the life and works of Bhanubhai Arbyas, also known as Swapnast. So we don't have much time, but are there any questions from anyone, even the online participants who are there? They may also be interested to know further if there are any questions. If not, I'll just have quickly one observation and we can move to the next presentation. You spoke on how Gandhi's stance, the anti-progressive stance, was something that was a determining factor in the decline of the progressive movement in Gujarati. So can you just briefly tell me about the early stages, how during the 1930s, right, with Gandhi's call for civil disobedience and also with the Quit India movement, how are these progressives dealing with the changing scenario, particularly in Gujarat?
Yes, that is something I tried to outline.
Yes.
By beginning with the pioneers or the initiators.
Yes, just wanted to know a
Joshi,
little bit on that. Yeah.
Yes, who started this movement, and they were very much in touch with Gandhi. They were in favor of the freedom struggle.
Yes.
But there was the impact of socialism upon them, and they had come in touch with the progressive group in Bombay, And in Urdu, actually, the movement was very much in vogue, and therefore, actually, they were not much producing their works in line with Gandhian ideology. So initially, there is a critique of Gandhi. I don't have the. I wanted to read one poem by Sundaram, where he is critiquing Gandhi. Also, he critiques the rich people, factory owners, and he wants to talk about one woman who does not have a house. So all major, the older generation and also the newer generation, they take the sides of the Mazdoors. And though Gandhi is a very venerable figure for them, but they are not producing their works in this stage from that ideology. But yes, for one important point, Gandhi is important, that the two poets, Joshi and Sundaram, in their later careers, they turn away from progressive writers movement. They also turn away from their leftist ideology, and Joshi becomes Gandhian, and Gandhism is also responsible for the vociferous way in which the progressive writers movement that should have been carried out in Gujarati. The other poet, Sundaram, he also moves to a kind of philosophical pursuit. But nonetheless, in this brief stage of literary production, we find the influence of the socialist thinking, and there is a wonderful writing which is produced, which is very difficult to find and not much translated in English, going out of the vernacular.
Right. So thank you so much, Dr. Raval, for your presentation and your observations. So
Yes.
thank you so much. So maybe we can make move to the next presenter. So our next presenter, yes. No, Asif Abrar is the next presenter. Yeah. See there.
Just ask if he's.
Asif Abrar, are you there? I don't see his name.
Yeah, that's all.
Right. So then let's move to the final presentation. It is not there. Vazra Adil, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Great, great. So then we move to, I don't see Asif.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Asif Abrar has already made presentation, offline presentation yesterday. He is there in Integral University. He has already made presentation yesterday. He was supposed to be making offline.
Yes, 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 yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Dr. Adil, you may go ahead.
Yeah.
With your...
Adil
Thank
is a
you, ma'am.
research scholar at the Department of English in Aligarh Muslim University. And her presentation is on Love, Protest and Resistance, a study of the select poems of Faiz Ahmad Faiz. So may I request Vazra Adil to please limit your presentation to 15 minutes?
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Have 2-3 minutes of discussion.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please
Thank
start
you,
your
sir.
presentation. Yes.
Okay. So my paper entitled is Love, Protest and Resistance, a study of select poems of Faiz Ahmad Faiz. The movement of progressive writers was a breath of fresh air in the canon of literature. In addition to being a literary organization, the All India Progressive Writers Association, which was established in 1930, was also a social and political movement that altered how people viewed poetry as a whole. The progressives freed Urdu poetry from all of its cliché, and it developed a new ideology of resistance and defiance along with the poetry of the commonplace and everyday. The idioms of romance was transformed into allegories of revolution and resistance. The progressive movement can be seen as a movement away from the doctrine of art for art's sake. Progressive poetry was fundamentally about social liberation. All progressives shared the opinion that it is a poet's or writer's duty to advance humanity and speak up for the oppressed as an artist, and as such, this is known as humanitarian imperative. Progressive literature must incorporate activism into its stories and poetry. The core of progressive literature is a quest for humanity through creative media. Progressive literature has seen a paradigm shift in focus from the elite to the masses. The suppressed and the subjugated found a space in progressive literature, which was a significant change. Faiz Ahmad Faiz was a member of a Progressive Writers Association, and he needs no introduction as a poet. His oeuvre has a variety from love poems to resistance poetry. He has published many collections of poetry. His first collection was Naqsh-e-Faryadi, which contained a total of 32 nazm, 15 ghazal, and 4 kitas. His second collection, Daste-Saba, and his third collection, Zindanama, were written by him while he was in prison. He was imprisoned for 4 years in Rawalpindi case. There are other collections as well. Faiz himself divided Naqsh-e-Faryadi into 2 parts. In his essay, The True Epoch of the Creation of Naqsh-e-Faryadi, he wrote, and I quote, I feel that from 1920 to 1930 and then from 1930 to 1940, these 2 eras are totally different from each other in terms of literature, political conditions, and attitude and emotions of people. The poem of the first half of Naqsh-e-Faryadi were written between 1928 and 1934. My student days, most of these were influenced by the first era, and the second half contained poems written after 1935 when I was teaching, and most of them were written in Amritsar, and these relate to the second era, that is 1930s to 1940s. The first half of Naqsh-e-Faryadi contained mostly love poems reflecting the typical preoccupation of a young person. As Faiz later wrote, they are musing of the carefree youth. He wrote further, and I quote, first of all, this was the time of leisure, of financial security and freedom from the worries or cares. Unquote. Naqsh-e-Faryadi begins with Faiz's most well-known verse set, that is Last Night. The images and the metaphors used in this set are common enough in Urdu poetry, but the way Faiz has juxtaposed them to each other is remarkable. Wilderness and spring, desert and breeze, sickness and peace. The verses are, first I'll read in Urdu, then I'll read in the translated version. रात यूं दिल में तेरी खोई हुई याद आई, जैसे वीराने में चुपके से बाहर आए, जैसे सहराओं में होले से चले बाद नसीम, जैसे बीमारों को बेवजह करार आए. Its translation in English is, last night your faded memory filled my heart, like a spring's calm advent in the wilderness, like the soft desert footfalls of the breeze, like a peace somehow coming to one in sickness. The romantic poems of the first half of Naqsh-e-Faryadi are clearly influenced by English romantic poets. Faiz acknowledged this, citing both classical English romantic poets such as Keats and Shelley, and most contemporary ones like the Houseman as a major influence on his early poetry. In order to understand the impact of a great poet on his era, it is necessary to also understand the age in which the poet lives. According to Faiz's friends and literary scholar Ludmila Vasileva, and I quote, a truly great poet is a product of his circumstances, the need of the times. What makes a great poet is not exactly something which can be quantified or characterized. It is like Iqbal says, बड़ी मुश्किल से होते हैं चमन में दीदार वर पैदा. With great difficulty is the discerning eye born. Before the turmoil surrounding of 1947, Faiz poetry spoke of love, of romance. Then came his famous poem, मुझसे पहले से मोहब्बत मेरे महबूब न मान. There is a noticeable transition from the first to the second verse in this poem. The first stanza seems like a love song in which the poet discusses the eye of the beloved. The second verse abruptly turned to the deformed bodies, leaking purse, which created Faiz's viewpoint on his political poetry. The transition between the first and the second stanzas demonstrate that our life is not always rosy and that he is always forced to return to the hard realities of existence. The shift from the love poem to the poem of stark, ugly realities of life can be seen in the following lines. And I'll be reading in Urdu first. Just a minute. मुझसे पहले से मोहब्बत मेरे महबूब न मांग, मैंने समझा था कि तू है तो दरख्शां है हयात, तेरा गम है तो गम दहर का झगड़ा क्या है, तेरी सूरत से है आलम में बहारों की सबात, तेरी आंखों के सिवा दुनिया में रखा क्या है, तू जो मिल जाए तो तकदीर निगू हो जाए, यूं न था मैंने फकत चाहा था यूं हो जाए, और भी दुख है जमाने में मोहब्बत के सिवा, राहतें और भी हैं बस की राहत के सिवा, अनगिनत सदियों के तारीख बाहिमन रेशमो अतलस व कमखाब में बुनवाए हुए, जा बजा बिकते हुए पूछो बाजार में जिस्म, खाक में लिथड़े हुए खून में नहलाए हुए, जिस्म निकाले हुए अमराज तरोरों से, पीप बहती हुई गलते हुए नसीरों से, लौट जाती है उधर नजर भी क्या कीजिए, अब भी दिलकश है तेरा हुस्न मगर क्या कीजिए, और फिर दुख है जमाने में मोहब्बत के सिवा, राहतें और भी हैं बस की राहत के सिवा, मुझसे पहले से मोहब्बत मेरे महबूब न मान. And its English translation is, the sky wherever I looked, I was nothing but your eyes. You if you would fall into
Maybe
my.
you can continue with your analysis.
Sure, sir,
We
sure.
don't have much time. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. The Nazm is a love poetry that eventually develops into the social commentary and a criticism of social cause. As he does in many other poems, Faz defamiliarizes the reader with the concept of love as a whole by doing this. The first and the second stanza in the stark contrast to one another. This is the conflict between the poet's desired romance and the realities of life, where Faz's romance and the utopia he lives every day are found. Suffering is never just a personal phenomenon for Faz. It is always collective or directed toward the societal injustice or quality in general. In this collective suffering lies the true crux of protest literature. This is not to say that Faz does not have poems which are exclusively political or exclusively romantic, but it is in this union of political and the romantic that a space for the covert and sometimes overt activism is created. Conventional Urdu poets Conventional Urdu ghazal's entire framework was turned on its head by Faiz Ahmad Faiz, a poet who is read by both the literary elite and the general public. He utilized it as a platform to address the unjust human condition. In Urdu poetry, the iconic figure of a beloved is typically connected to the romantic love, but Faiz expanded this metaphor to incorporate the idea of revolution and nation as a whole. In his poem Two Loves, he himself explained this metaphor as how the beloved means both the woman as well as the nation. One kind of love is humankind, which consists of physical and sexual craving and is reserved for the beloved. The other kind of love is reserved for the country, its people, and their suffering and humanity. Both of these relationships demand the same level of dedications and devotions. I'm not reading the lines and I'll go on. He looked beyond the ideals of the individual or even the nation, focusing instead on a much bigger canvas of humanity's plight. As Edwin Rich explained, and I quote, a revolutionary poem will not tell you who or when to kill, what or when to burn, or even how to theorize. It reminds you where and when and how you are living and might live. It is a big of desire. It may do its work in the language and the images of dream, list, love letters, prison letters, chants, meditation, and cries of pain. In a poem, Subh Azadi, he raises doubts about the authenticity of the freedom we have attained. The concept of the freedom and how it was attained left Fez utterly disappointed. Fez became disillusioned with the concept of freedom due to the division of the two countries in the name of the independence. The promises given to the people of both nations in the name of freedom also left him feeling dejected and isolated. He shares the discontent of many who believed that the freedom was won and the price paid to win it made many promises to the populace but fell short of fulfilling those promises. And I'll read the poem, just few lines. ये दाग दाग उजाला ये शब गजीदा शहर वो इंतजार था जिसका ये वो शहर तो नहीं ये वो शहर तो नहीं जिसकी आरज़ू लेकर चले थे यार कि मिल जाएंगे कहीं ना कहीं फलक के दश्त में तारों की आखिरी मंजिल कहीं तो होगा शब सुस्त मौज का साहिल कहीं तो जाके रुकेगा सफरीनाए गमे दिल. Fez demonstrate that literature is not only about picking roses, daffodils, and violet, it is more about politics. The common man's exploitation in ruler's hand is a recurring theme in his poetry. He felt the pain of and anguish of the masses' suffering, especially in his nation and the world. He committed himself to this cause, no matter the consequences. He was jailed for this a revolutionary ideology by the government twice. Only physically caged, he freed himself from the dark chambers and the sky-laden walls. His will of meaning-making wouldn't be incarcerated despite all the efforts to curb his imagination and freedom. He remarkably echoed this in these lines, and I quote, their lines are like, if ink and pen are snatched from me, shall I, who have dipped my fingers in my heart's blood, complain? Or if they seal my tongue when I have made a mouth of every round link of my cheek? And I'm not...
Please come to your conclusion.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sure, sir. Just few minutes. There's another resistance poem famous for resistance is we too shall see, hum dekhenge. And in this poem, he talked about the resistance, and this
You may just mention the name of the poems, and then you may come to your conclusion.
हम देखेंगे, लाजिम है कि हम भी देखेंगे.
Right, ठीक.
Okay. So, and wait a minute. So I will conclude my paper. Okay.
Yeah.
So some people saw Faz as a poet who followed tradition, while others saw him as a poet who makes extensive use of innovation. However, a close examination indicates that Faz combined both tradition and innovation. K. Sachinandan, in his essay Poetry Against Violence, quote James Joyce slices squeezes via olives and then goes on to say that it means that writers yield their best under oppressive environment, and it is the fact that various forms of oppression and tyranny have produced some of the most passionate poetic work of our time. Faz is a poet who created his work with the intention of eradicating injustice and leaving people the fortitude of endure. He obviously aims to present various perspectives on revolution and resistance. His poetry generally presents complex analysis of power, ideology, class, and presentation. Faz himself remarks that, and I quote, art gets its particular direction with the changing of circumstances. See, for example, the literature coming out of Palestine, how their poet Mahmoud Darwish captures and presents the condition with his artistic abilities. Same should be the case with the poet of other places. Unquote. He not only wrote for his beloved Pakistan, but took into consideration other oppressed places as well, like Africa, Palestine, etc. This reading of Faz's poem considers his political and social commitment and tries to locate his idea in the political context of his time. Praising Faz, Aga Shahid Ali remarks that, and I quote, a non-subcontinental audience may begin to understand his stature as a poet and public figure by imagining a combination of Pablo Neruda, Nazim Hikmat, Octavia Paz, and Palestinian Mahmoud Darwish. Unquote. For Faz, the poet formed the ideology of revolution in people's mind, inspired the urge to fight and culminate external actions. Moreover, for him to promote the revolution, it is the moral duty of every individual. His poetry has a virile voice and messages that deserve to be heard in the modern world's complex socio-political scenario. His translation by great scholars like Lomi Lazard, Aga Shahid Ali, and Shiv K. Kumar offers substantial material for English-loving readers on how his poetry sounds and appeals. These translators loved him and wanted to transcend his poetry.
If you may quickly conclude your presentation, we
Sure.
are, yeah, please.
Sure, sir. Okay.
Yeah, we have to start the next session, please.
Okay, sir. Okay. To conclude, Faz confirms to hallmark of good writing as a set of Nietzsche, and I quote, of all that is written, I love only what a person hath written with his blood. Write with blood, and thou wilt find that blood is a spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Vajra Adil, for your presentation. We could have had a few more questions, but then looking at the time, we will not be able to take any further questions. So thank you. All the presentations we had 4 presentations in this session: Mohammad Saqib Abrar, Dr. Raza Naim, Dr. Piyush Rawal, and Vajra Adil. Thank you, all of you, for your thought-provoking presentations and discussions that subsequently followed. So we look forward to your continued association with us, and we shall be concluding the session now. If there are no questions, you want to quickly ask this question, or should we conclude? I think, yeah, we almost well beyond time. Yes, so we have to start the next session. So thanks to all the presenters for your participation. Thank you so much. Right.
Yeah, it's fine.